Hello, everybody. We're live. All right. Welcome back to the show. It's live Alex Aquarius. What I'm going to do today is I fixed something that happened yesterday during my live show. And I just want to show you the video where I interviewed my mother about our friendly alien abduction in our front yard that we both witnessed together. And yesterday when I went to play that, for some reason the audio was not working in my computer to share it with you on my OBS broadcasting format. So I went back and I fixed the sound, and I've done some recordings and they played back in the recording, but this is the first time to live stream, so let's see if it works. But I told you basically when I was 6 or 7, there was a craft that landed in our yard, maybe 2, I remember. One took off before the first one. My mother went up in it. Says she left. She says I went up in it and left, but even though we went separately, we talked to the beings. They were in our yard. They were telepathic, and they took me aboard and they showed me things. And I think I flew off with them because there's no inertia in a craft. When you move, you don't go, oh, we're going that way. Doesn't jerk you. You don't feel the brakes coming on or any shock absorbing, So what I thought was looking at screens on the outer peripheral wall may have actually been looking out of some type of window while we were actually visiting those places that I saw. Because my mother says we left and she waited for me for a long time on the grass. But I know this might all sound freaky to you if you just tuned in, but I have a couple of videos out and I'm going to show you this one. This is where, just within the last few years, it started to come back to me, this memory that I had as a child. It just disappeared completely out of my brain, out of my memory, my consciousness. And then I started to remember details from that night. And I went back and I asked my mom, I said, hey, did I ever talk about aliens in the front yard? And she just started nodding her head. And she remembers also, and she also forgot. So we sit down together now, and we talk about what we remember. And I'll go back to her and I'll say, hey, have you remembered anything else? Is there anything new? It's really odd. But we'll see what we can do here. All right, if I show you, let me go back so you can see the screen I'm looking at. Okay, now you're going to see the screen. If I go to, okay, this is the video. This is my alien abduction close encounter with mother in the front yard. As you can see, YouTube has stuck the Wikipedia definition of alien abduction there on my story. It's called Alien Encounter with Mom Aboard Craft, Telepathy, Friendly Abduction, Close Encounter of the Third Kind. It only has 50 views. I think yesterday it had 30 something. I just put it up about 5 months ago. And it just doesn't get out there. It doesn't get seen very much. So today I have to do a live show every day. That's one of my goals. So today I'm going to play this for you, which did not work yesterday. You ready? The picture on the screen at the top right, that's the house. Let me get my... Look, from the corner, right from where I took this picture this morning, that's the actual picture from today. I took that picture on the way over here. In the grass, if you go across the grass to the house, the first window on your left, that was my bedroom window, my front. And in the middle there's a U-shaped driveway, and there's the front porch. Those are both in the experience. So I got a picture, and I came over, and we're going to do this broadcast. So when I started to tell my mother about this, I said, you came in my bedroom, and you got me out of bed, and said you wanted me to meet somebody, and we went out into the front yard, and she started nodding. She goes, yeah. She goes, yeah. We went out they were over in the side yard up by the ditch, and she goes, you remember too? What? So we're both realizing that we had our memory wiped or something happened. Maybe they didn't even wipe anything. It was just so traumatic, our own brains took it out. So how did it start for you? When did you, were you in bed asleep? And
And where was I? Was I in my room asleep?
You were asleep, I was asleep. And then became aware that these beings were right outside on the east side of the house.
You knew that from being in bed?
Yes.
That beings were outside in front of the house?
Yes.
So it was telepathic. And you knew it was the east side in this side yard? So you had to have known that.
We like to plant gardens.
Yeah, we used to have a garden in the back of that lot, didn't we? Well, I remember there was a pile of lumber or something that was always back there, or some...
For building a chicken house that never got built.
Yeah, we were going to build a coop that never got built. But yeah, it was between the coop and the street right there. See where that light pole is? They have a street light now. I don't think we had a street light in the yard.
No, you didn't.
This occurred, when was it, 1969? I was in kindergarten or first grade. It would have been 69 or 70. If I was 5.
I think you were first grade.
I think I was in first grade because I remember I had show and tell at school. It comes up in the story.
You show and tell this?
I told them something they showed me I wanted to take a show and tell. And they laughed. Telepathically, they laughed. They thought that was amusing. I thought, wow, can I take this to school and show it to show and tell? And I remember they were my height, just a little bit taller. So if I was 5 or 6, probably 6, 6.5. Years old, and they were just a little bit taller than me, which would go with about the size of the craft. Anyway, so go back to what you were doing in bed. So you know there's beings out in the front yard. Did you just get up and go look?
I'm wondering what the heck they're doing there. Are they a danger? Were you out in the yard there already?
No, but I have a vague recollection that I was already awake in my room doing the same thing, looking out the window at them. So I think, anyway, you go ahead.
Well, I just remember I got to get out there so I can monitor what's happening.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Because I didn't know if they had called you out there or what had gone on.
What about, I won't say her name, what about my sister who was there? Was she involved, or was she?
Nobody was involved except just you and I.
Okay, that's right. For me. So, the first recollection I had of this memory when I first told you about the dream was I remember you coming into my bedroom and saying, "Come here, I want you to meet somebody."
I don't even remember.
Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
But I'm thinking now, I'm having a vague, it's like when you try to remember a dream when you just woke up and 15 minutes later you can't remember what you were dreaming about, but you have a vague recollection of what it was, maybe a scene. Same thing. It's like the movie The Hangover. I kind of remember looking out my window and seeing the craft and some beings. There might have been one right at my window looking at me right through the window where that bush is.
And as a parent, I look back and think, why didn't you go to your dad and tell him? And that's when he worked for a company in the north.
Mm-hmm.
And went out of town and had meetings in that state.
Is that Ohio? You know, he worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Do you know he told me that right before he passed away.
Huh.
I said, "You worked at Wright-Pat?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "What did you work on?" He said, "I don't remember." But that's where the UFOs are. That's where they took the aliens, allegedly from Roswell to Wright-Patterson. And that's the company that Dad worked for was in a town right next to that Air Force Base.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of history coming out. So, anyway, so go ahead. So you were wondering why I didn't go to Dad?
Well, I knew he wasn't there. I knew why you didn't go. You had good sense.
Yeah.
You just don't get things worked up.
Do you know, in my lifetime, I've always had a paranoia of looking out a window at night because I don't want to see the face of an alien.
Not until we started talking about this.
I mean, guys, maybe some of you, I don't like to be around windows at night because I don't want to look out because I think there's going to be an alien looking right back at me. And now And now I'm wondering if that's not what happened at this house, right? Because it's a super vague recollection. I think it was standing maybe 10, 12 feet from the window, just right there. And that's a tall vertical window that goes low. It's an upright window. It's like a full body window. So did you get up and go out in the yard? Or did you? You were by yourself. You weren't with me. According to what I remember, if you came in my room and you said, come with me, I want you to meet someone, maybe you came straight from the bedroom telepathically and you knew what to do.
Are you saying you went in your sister's room?
No, nothing to do with her. It was just, I was in my bed. I don't think I was asleep there. I might have just run and jumped back in my bed if I heard you coming. And so when you walked in, I already knew you were coming, and I got up.
You did that a lot, didn't you?
Didn't I? You know, kids are still up playing in the room. Mom's coming, they go lay in bed. But I'm just wondering if I saw you maybe out in the yard with them, and then they sent you back in the house.
Well, I was in the yard at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember going out the front door to get there. I don't know how I got to the front yard.
Without me. This is by yourself. This is an experience you had by yourself.
Well, yeah, trying to figure out what the heck's going on out in my yard.
Because you asked me, you said when I went outside, you said, were they standing in the yard like this, and you had your hands on your waist, like your fists on your waist, like a coach, and with the whistle? And I said, no, I didn't see that. When I went out in the yard, I saw the craft, kind of like a doorway was open. There was like a ramp.
Yeah.
It wasn't stairs, it was a ramp. And it was, but they were inside. I don't remember ever any of them in the yard, but you do. And now I vaguely remember one standing in front of my window. So somehow, what I want to know is, how did they know to come to my yard and come get me? It was either somebody we knew working at NASA, or my father, or for some other reason I can't even imagine.
Yeah, your father could still be working at Wright Patterson.
At that time?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that. You know, I just found out it was in 2015. We were sitting outside his place at a picnic table, and he said he worked at Wright Patterson right after he got out of the Air Force. He was in the Korean War.
What year?
Oh, I don't even remember. And I remember I already knew a lot about UFOs and aliens and Wright Patterson in Ohio and the town of Dayton. And when he said he worked there, I went, really? I said, what'd you do? And he was having a lot of trouble with his memory. He'd had cancer for 10 years already. But he could not remember for the life of him. He was just like, I can't remember what I did there. But this is getting stranger as we talk more. But, so you were out there by yourself without me before you came back in?
I suspect I was.
You suspect. I almost have a vague recollection of seeing you in a gown walking that way from my window.
I do remember that.
You might have even known I was looking out the window. And you can't remember.
That sounds familiar.
Does it?
I would have done that to prepare you to not be frightened. Yeah.
You know, I look back, this was a friendly encounter. I don't remember, you know, you hear a lot of people when they discuss alien abductions or encounters with aliens, they were pulled out of their bed and levitated through the ceiling into a craft, and then they were poked and prodded and sexually abused, or some torture, you know, needles going into the uterus or the eyeballs or whatever. You know, there was none of that. There was no operations going on or any trauma. It was friendly visit. Did you get any idea that it was negative?
You know, the sign that we says that we hear it on movies and TVs is this do no harm.
Right.
That's a big sign on our forehead.
Prime directive.
Do no harm.
Yeah. Do not harm me. So we went out in the yard. Well, what I remember is, what I first started to recall a few years ago was, you came into my room and you said,
Come see this.
come with me, I want you to meet someone. And like you said, you might have been thinking of a way to introduce me without being frightened. But I get the idea that I already knew who I was going to see because I'd already seen them. And so I was excited to take
in the window.
You know, I can't see their faces. It's like their faces are blurred out.
Yeah.
But I think you saw their faces.
I can't imagine what I was thinking or feeling.
Maybe they read your mind that I was going to be frightened and they hid their faces. So what did we do? I remember going down the hall with you, holding your hand. We went up through the porch, out the front door. We turned right and we started walking towards that side yard. Just right by that street light post.
Out by the street.
And they were up by the street, by the ditch.
That's by the neighbor's, that's by their driveway.
Right. Yeah, I took this picture in front of the neighbor's driveway. This is still incredible. We're talking about this and we're filling in all each other's details of a dream. So, I remember it was kind of a windy, breezy night too.
Warm.
And it was warm. Not sweaty warm, but it wasn't cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking out and you were on my left, walking across the yard, because when I went up the ramp, you let go of my hand and you stood on the grass by the craft, but you did not go up in with me. Why did you not go up in?
I have no idea.
Maybe they were sending some kind of command, like, let the boy go, let him come in.
I don't know. Maybe I'd already been in.
Maybe you went in and flew off with them and came back or something.
That just rang a bell. Flew off with them. I think that happened.
With you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never thought about that before.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what was the experience for you? I mean, I told you I had this dream and we figured out you were there with me, but actually it was your experience and I was with you as well. Well, the only difference in my recollection is I was inside the craft and you were not with me. You waited in the yard.
So it can be your experience, not mine.
But you were there. It's weird. How do you explain an alien fifth kind encounter when you can't remember all the details, but you share the same memory? Ooh. So.
Did you ever tell Dad this?
No, I didn't remember this before he passed away. It was like a year or so afterward. It just started coming to my mind. I'm kind of afraid to talk about it because if I'm over there taking pictures today and now we're talking about it, I don't want them to come back. If they know,
it's true.
It's true. If they know telepathically I'm trying to dig up all these memories and you are too, then they might come back.
If these are big bad brothers, that would be bad.
Yeah.
It's the same people as we had before. That's okay.
Yeah, if it was the same guys as before. But what I remember, when I walked out, I went up into the craft. You stood on the left side of the ramp. I went up in, I turned right. There was the boss alien person was there to greet me, and there were two others, but I got the feeling that they were like deckhands. They were just two deckhands on the craft. Let me use this. They were like two deckhands, and they showed me screens. There were like flat screens, like an like a tablet. But those didn't exist in 69 or 70. I remember I was looking, I was in the... For us, for them it did. That's true, I never thought of that. Technology existed, we just didn't have the revelation of it.
Yeah.
I guess that's true for all technology that we don't even know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked in, I turned right, and I was looking towards the outer wall of the craft, which was much larger on the inside than it looks on the outside.
Okay, explain that.
Explain it.
I don't know, but it's like when you look from the outside, it was probably no bigger than 18 feet in diameter. To me, I was a little kid. It seemed huge, but now I look and it was only like longer than a station
Look at
wagon.
Mom, she can see it.
So
But once you got inside, it extended the,
you were inside. Once you get inside, it's like there's rooms everywhere and halls going off, and I wonder if it's like a portal to another dimension and you're kind of halfway on the other side in their world or something.
mm,
Blows your mind, doesn't it?
well, it does.
But I remember they showed me screens. I don't think it was as much. I've had this idea that it wasn't as much as they were teaching me something, but they were getting my reaction to things, and they showed me things on screens. And I don't remember if it was violence or sexual or nature or science.
What if it was just for this thing you were doing right here? Just so that you could go and tell them what you saw and what happened to you.
So I could share in the future what
Yeah.
happened to me, because they wanted me to share.
Yeah.
So anyway, you were saying you were inside and when you walked in it extended?
You may have shared that with me because when you were telling me that you did this, I saw it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I saw going down a long hall. There wasn't a long hall there, but from the outside of it. But inside there's a long hall.
Yeah. And I've heard in other alien abduction experiences, people talk about the craft being much larger on the inside. There's more rooms and hallways than you can imagine, and it's just much bigger on the inside. So how the experience ended for me was I think as I walked in and I walked down the hall to the right along the perimeter wall on the inside, I was like on a perimeter wall looking at these flat screens. And the boss one was standing behind my right shoulder and the other two were on my left.
You know, I'm looking at this now. I filmed this about a year ago. What I just said, I was going around the perimeter wall, and it's the outside curvature of the path around the inside of the ship, around the hull. And I was looking at these, what look like typically rectangular type screens. Maybe what I was actually looking at was some type of window technology through the metal of the side of the craft, so that you can't see a window, but it just becomes a window. Once you're on the inside and you turn it on, then you can see where you're at. And since UFOs can just zap around anywhere they want without inertial problems, I probably was flying to these different places that they showed me, looking through a window, and thought I was looking at some type of flat computer screens or televisions. Because my mother said that we took off and we flew away, and she says she waited like forever on the grass and she waited for me.
And they were showing me things, and I just remember, I don't know if I was learning or seeing what I was going to do in the future, or maybe I was being shown things so that they could read my reaction and see how I would react to things. But when they were done, they showed me this pen-looking thing. It looked like a remote.
Maybe they wanted to know if I had the personality to be a cult worshipping. Whoops, I almost said some words. I probably wouldn't go along. I wouldn't be a follower of that thing, and maybe they noticed it. And they left me alone because nothing like this has ever happened in my life again that I remember. Now, who knows, the way they pull out of my memory, there could be others.
You know, like, you remember those pens that had all the different colors with the springs? And you had red, blue,
Yeah.
green, black. It was about that big around. It was kind of like those fusion razors that have the 5 blades. You know, it has got that big rubbery round looking knob thing. It was a little bigger. It was like a fat pen, like a Mont Blanc pen, but a little fatter. But it was silver and it had buttons all over it. And that's what I wanted to take to show and tell. They showed it to me. I remember the leader, he handed me this thing, and I remember taking it and I was looking at it and trying to, and I was asking, what does this button do? And he said, push this one, I think. And that's the last thing I remember.
Oh, that reminded me.
But I asked him, I remember I said, can I take it to Miss Cooper's class and show it for show and tell?
No.
No, you can just push that button.
That was like, what is where the creatures from outer space that look like animals live in New York City?
Men in Black.
Men in Black. Remember his, look at our,
Yeah, the wand, and it's...
yeah, and I'm going, no, don't look. There you would have been.
That part seems to be real. So some of that effect in the movie were added from real experiences. And that just happens to be in my experience. But I remember they were amused telepathically. They were laughing. That I thought, cool, can I take this to school for show and tell?
They'll love this wand to show it.
But I do have one vague memory walking back across the front yard with you back towards the porch. So I remember going back to the house.
Mm-hmm.
But I even have, I've thought about this for the last year and a half. I even have a memory of being in class at school the next day thinking, should I tell my story? Can I tell? I might have told my story. Who knows if I got up and I don't
got up
know.
in front of my class and told it.
What if you were my school teacher and the kid got up for show and tell? I just want to tell you about these guys that visited me last night in my yard. And they might have gone, great. Sit back down, please.
That may have been a shock to help.
I don't know.
My first grade teacher, Mrs. Cooper, she didn't do anything. She just told me.
So what? Now, when you
That's
waited
a
for
neat
me in the
story.
yard
Go
when I
sit
was looking
down.
at screens, here's where we had a discussion about. I thought the door was open and we were on the ground the whole time, and your head was at the bottom of the doorway, and you were just right there waiting for me to come back out. And the door was open the whole time. The ramp was down. Is that what you remember?
Pretty much. I have such little memory.
Oh, I'm right there. Don't worry, it's not you. Like I said, I wonder if it was the trauma and the strangeness that made our own minds erase that. Or, well, they did have the device. I had it in my hand.
Look at my mom's eyes. She can see it.
Just like Men in Black, it works. That seems to be real.
She's seeing it.
You said at one point that we took off and flew off and came back.
And a little, would it have gone back, shrunk back to a small self? It would have had to have, because it would have been so big, it would have shown up on radar. And if they're trying to keep it small.
That's another thing. How does a craft land in that yard at night? What time would it have been? Maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, too?
Or two.
See? We just agree on the time like that. Like, yeah, it's just a given, but we're talking about a fifth kind encounter. It just still shocks me. Yeah, 1 or 2, we both just said. Yeah, look. Remembering a picnic.
This is funny.
We didn't eat, did we?
No, they didn't give me any food. I don't think they eat. I don't know. But
She's always been a dead comic.
What else was I going to ask? Since we've talked, I've had a lot of things that have come up in my memory I wanted to ask you about. Like, I do have a vague recollection now of one standing right outside my window, and that would explain my phobia of looking out the window at night.
I think there was more than one standing outside my window. There's at least 3.
Okay, my phobia at
Maybe
night
6.
about looking out at windows is because I'm expecting to see something that I'm afraid of and fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking quickly, and I'm looking north, south, east, west, corner. No, it's not there.
But you always automatically look, you have like a
Automatic.
phobia. I call it a phobia, but
Yeah.
I have the same thing. I remember, like, in all my houses, I've always, when I go to the kitchen, if there's a kitchen window, I try not to look out the window. I just do my stuff and turn the light off and go right up back up.
That's right.
I don't want to, like, start looking out the window and go, oh, there he is again. Crap.
And for him to go, well, hello again.
Alex.
Alex.
So, and then for him to say what?
Meet again.
We meet again.
Do you
This is-
still want me to come this with you this time?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Dan Burrish?
No.
Dan Burrish is a biologist, and have you ever heard of MJ12 or Majestic 12?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You
My
had
mom knows
Corso's
this.
book, didn't you? Philip Corso, The Day After
Yeah.
Roswell.
Who's mom?
Guys, when I was
growing up, MJ12, of course. Yeah. That's Mom.
Growing up as a teenager, my mother had Philip Corso's book on the bookshelf. That's how I knew about Roswell, before the internet. Because my mother told me about it. And then I've got another video where my bishop at church was at the Roswell cleanup in 47 in July 8th. And he told me about what the dead aliens looked like and the one with the burnt cheeks
at the Roswell crash
that I've got in my picture that I
right
found.
the blanket and saw the
it was the one at Wright-Patterson.
Which allegedly they took to Wright-Patterson according to books and stories. Which is where my father later worked after the...
It runs in families?
I don't know. Oh, but Dan Burrish, I was going to tell you, he's got a video. He was interviewed on Project Camelot, this other podcaster that makes videos, this woman. And she interviews a lot of whistleblowers and people who have alien experiences. And she interviewed Dan Burrish, and he's on NJ12. And he said also Dick Cheney's on NJ12. And remember, I worked for him. So I actually know someone who's on NJ12. Who's very infamous. But Dan Burrish had the same experience when he was 7 years old. He ended up at Area 51 working underground. He was doing skin biopsies on this alien that had a degenerative skin disease, and they were trying to heal it. So he would go in and take biopsies of the skin and poke it with needles, and it hurt, and it would say, he would be in pain. And he would have to walk like into a submarine chamber, and they had a button where there would be a bomb blow. If anything went wrong, they would blow him up and the alien. That was my message. And he said one time he tripped and the alien jumped up on his chest to communicate with him, and they almost pushed the vacuum button and whooshed him out into vapor.
Oh.
And he said, no. And he was telepathically talking to the alien and telling the guys on the radio at the same time, it's okay, he's not hurting me. But they had a button where if you went in to be with the alien and anything went wrong or there was any kind of threat to the base or the person in there, they would hit a button and everybody in that enclosure would be blown out the tubes. And he had to prevent that by yelling in his radio, no! But when he was 7 years old, he was in a park and he was playing football with his grandfather. I think it was in Arizona or New Mexico or California. And a craft came down, he got in it and flew off, and he came back, and his father waited underneath a tree. I think this is the story. You can look up Dan Burrish's story when he was a child. But he came back and he said it was a friendly experience, and they flew him around and showed him things, and he came back home. And that's what I did. I think if we took off. Now, if I was in the craft being shown things, I don't know if the door closed and we could have. I think there's no inertia. Like when the ship takes off, you don't go, whoa, like a subway train, you know?
Now I think we took off.
You just, poof, you're just going somewhere else, but you don't feel like you're moving.
I want to remember what I saw.
And they don't want to frighten you.
Right.
I do not have a clear vision of their face.
Which is odd because you hear stories about other abductions that almost sound like a devilish attack, or a demon attack where these people have the paralysis and they can't move and they just feel this yucky low vibration feeling, and they almost have to cast them out by using the name of Jesus Christ or something. But it's almost like a demonic attack. Which I also have had, and I have a video on that too. Remember in the basement in Idaho? So, but this wasn't like that at all.
No, this was mundane.
This was mundane, yes. Worldly. Plain mundane. The worldly plane. Is that all you want to talk about?
For the moment.
For the moment. All right, folks. We might do this show again because we might have more memories come out, and we'll talk about it later. But this is how my mother and I remember our alien fifth kind encounter, close encounter.
Bye.
Bye. Signing off. Ciao, everybody. Bye. Please hit like, subscribe, ring the bell.
All right. How did you like that? How you like them apples?
Okay, well, in 1921,
Uh-oh. Who's playing?
a group of workmen working on the highway.
Let's turn all them off. Okay. Cute introvert. You like that? Hi, Yara. Let's see. How many people do we have now? We got 4 concurrent viewers. They might come back. Do you know that? Do you... Look what I'm sharing. I just talked to my mother who remembers an alien encounter in my front yard, talking to them with her aboard the craft and all this stuff, you know. There's not that many stories like this out there, and the ones I've heard of, like Dan Burrish's story, he's on MJ-12. It freaks me out. I don't know if I go into... I have a friend who is very good at hypnotic regression. She just wrote a book, which is coming out. She's one of these consciousness experts, and she travels around and she speaks at conferences. And she's done things like her husband told me she bent a piece of rebar with her neck after meditating. You know, she's got certain powers that she can draw upon. It's all about vibration. You know, my father's major, his interest that he was taught in the Air Force and through working at Wright-Patterson and everything was, strangely enough, he became a sound vibration engineer, and he learned about the magic of sound and vibration. He taught me a lot about that stuff when I was growing up. So, I'm pretty sure that these beings were at my house because they were probably looking through the minds of people that worked with them or that they knew of within the building that they were in somehow, if they could read somebody's mind. Let's say my father never even saw them. Hi, Pedro. What's up? But do you think they would come back? If I had, here's what I want out of this experience. I would like to have the hypnotic regression therapy and then ask, okay, what were we looking? I remember them, the 2 underlings standing next to me and the leader here, and looking at these screens and them feeding out of my mind, like, okay, what's he thinking? What do you think of that? Do you like that? What do you think of that? Does it look pretty, or what is that? And, you know, and I just remember one scene that was like a meadow with some trees, like looking at the back 40 in someone's property, you know, at tree level down, you know, for nothing special. And then there were, I don't remember war scenes or bloodthirsty blood and guts or anything. No bombs, no fires, no explosions, no noise. It was a peaceful, everything was nature. I just remember landscapes, you know, things like you would see on your Windows background pictures that they load in now. I just got Windows 10 Pro. I'm amazed at all those pictures they show you, you know, just beautiful landscape pictures. And what I don't know about was, were they asking me any questions about any ologies, you know, any ideologies or theology or any science? The ology of science, Scientology, you know. What were they asking me? What were they, with the small s? But what is it they wanted? And was that a cute interview, Ara? Did you like my mother? You can see it in her eyes. You know, think of how amazing this was. Literally just a few years ago, it was like 3 years ago now. I'm just driving around. I think I got up in the morning one morning and I had this dream where that scene came back where I was looking out my window and I saw the alien's face. Which I've always had that as a flashback, but thought I made it up, or I don't know where it comes from, but I don't even want to know. I just changed my mind and think about something else. And then I had the I think it's that first kept coming back and hitting me. And then I remembered my mother walking around the bed, right around my bedpost by my pillow, and her right hand out by my forehead and saying, "Come with me. There's someone I want." And we turned, and she was on my left, because when I went up the ramp into the craft, she was on my left. She let go of my hand. But I believe now I had been in the room watching her when she went there, and they took her up, and she came back, and she got out, and I thought, oh, it's just a ride. I'll do that. She looks fine. So I think after my mother did that and she came back, that's what got me to agree to do it. But I want to know, what was I doing in my room when, maybe I would remember this in hypnotic regression if they said, come to the window, we want to speak with you. I mean, what was the first communication that I had? I can't remember. Somehow I remember standing in my bedroom at the tall window, looking at these beings right in my front yard, looking at me, wanting me to come outside. And I do remember that somehow I told them telepathically, like, I'm not coming out there unless my mom goes out there. And like she asked, I don't know why I didn't ask for my father. My father was always more closed-minded. He never talked about this kind of stuff. Even though he could have been working on it, maybe that's why it's top secret. But my mother was in all kinds of what she calls skinnies and wild stories and paranormal experiences and trying to find UFOs and ghosts and cemeteries and things like that. Well, I remember for Halloween, me and her friend Barbara, we used to get on top of the car on the Dodge Challenger and me and my sister and our best friends and those two brothers, the four of us would be on the hood of the car going around through the cemetery at night to see if we could spot any ghosts. And my mom and her best friend would put us on the hood, and then they would sit in the car and just laugh. And then she would do stuff like come around a corner real slow and you could see the headlights looking at all these tombstones, and then she would honk the horn. We'd all go running off and they'd die laughing. They just had fun with us as kids and teased us to death with scary things. My mother was always scaring me with aliens, ghosts, witches, and her and her friend Barbara, they just had a great time. So I wanted to show you that. I hope you got more out of today's show than yesterday, because when I went to show that video, I'm glad to see that it worked. You like the UFO topic? I'm going to keep talking about it because I want to talk about what I remember. Here I am. I'm a person that's in my mid-50s. I just remembered this 3 years ago. I've even had other experiencers who have talked about alien abductions explain things to me where I didn't believe them at first and then now believe them. This was back in the early 90s. I also have that video on there, an MP eyewitness to the alien crash at Roswell. I have a friend who actually was my bishop at church in New Jersey after I'd graduated with my master's. This was like in 1991, 92. He was a bishop in the Mormon church, and he was at Roswell when he was like 20, 21. And he was in military police. So when they went to the cleanup site, he got on the truck and they got everybody out of the barracks and told him that there was a crash of a prop, a science fiction prop for a movie. Can you connect your near-death experience to UFO experience? Thank you for that question. This is what I want to know, why I do my channel. Why I've had all of these experiences. I call them my 7 experiences, but there's more. All the paranormal types of experience, the UFO encounter, the death experience. I've had all of them where I can comment, and I like that question. So how would you connect your death experience to the UFO experience? Well, I would say, first of all, when I drowned and I came out of my body, I just got right up and I was playing in the water and had no idea that I was dead. So your consciousness can live right outside of your body and it's like nothing. But at the same time, you intrinsically or endogenously, you learn that you're feeling vibrations from other time space. So there are other, it's like the movie Inception. I never saw that whole movie. Remember the van was crashing, it falls off the bridge and he goes into one time then another time and he keeps spinning that top to see if he's in the actual time where he's at. It's sort of like that. With my near-death experience, I know that here's one. I know that we reincarnate and go back through the moon somehow. The moon is what relegates, controls the 28-day cycle of the uterus, the blood cycle. But I think we go through the moon. So the moon has a lot to do with UFOs, aliens, and even though I'm also a person who believes in the geocentric flat model and that we do not live on a ball, but that also lines up with my out-of-body experience when I went to heaven, where I went through the 7 planets and through the waters above, and the firmament was above that. So with the UFO experience, I would say, with some other experiences like my heaven experience and I know that the space is flat that we're on. And so I know that the aliens can be here because I believe that they actually work for. Have you seen my video I put out about Admiral Byrd and the ancient ones he met below the North Pole? The ancient Aryan gods, these taller, blonde type, like the Nordics, like the rainbow Thor and the Rainbow Bridge type. They're the ones that make or control the Greys. Pretty convinced, because even in Travis Walton, you remember the lumberjack story, Fire in the Sky, he talks about how those Greys, when he was trying to fight them and hurt them, they eventually ended up taking him within the craft to a giant, large, beautiful, peopled, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Aryan-looking giants that helped him out. So yeah, I think all of this points, whether it's a near-death experience or a UFO experience, those UFO creatures, they're interdimensional and they're also underground. Which doesn't mean it has to be a ball. But I know they're here and I still believe it. But I believe they're what you would call, in religious terms or theological terms, they would be a creation of fallen archangels. Okay, if they're not above through the waters, like I saw, of the heaven above the planetary, onion structure, and then the waters above, you have to go through like wormhole to get through that water, and then the firmament above that, which is where the God, the Creator, is. If you're not there, and you're not talking about that God with a capital G, then everything else, these gray aliens that visit us, they're from inside the earth, and somehow they're controlled by what we call the Nordics. Jinns, yeah, and they're referred to as the jinns. And you see these old Renaissance paintings with the flying saucer hovering above Mary on the cliffside. Have you seen that? I think still, with all of the experiences that I've had, including this one, Close Encounter of the Fifth and Sixth Kind, on board the craft, in the craft, it's nothing new. I've even thought, what about the light that guided the Israelites in the story of Moses? It was a cloud by day and a light by night. Sure, they had some flying technology. Something was leading all these people marching on the ground. But that leads to a whole another story. I don't say another. That leads to a whole other story about Egypt and Tutmosis IV, who was known as Akhenaten, who was the elongated skulled hybrid alien who took all of the Jews out of Cairo, took them across the river down toward to build his city on the other bank. And I don't remember if they ever got back to Cairo, which is a similar story to the story of Moses in the Bible. But also Tutmosis IV, Akhenaten, the elongated-headed hybrid alien, half archangel, he was found in a basket floating on the Nile River by the house of Pharaoh, by a princess, and brought into the house of Pharaoh and raised, which is sort of the same story as Moses. He didn't feel comfortable and he wasn't as popular and cute as his Yul Brynner character, And the same thing happens to Akhenaten, Tutmos. He didn't feel human around other humans, so he wanted to just go out in the desert and build his own giant city and live. And he did, so you can find that archaeologically. But some of these stories, you have the same story in the Quran, do you? Of Tutmos IV. I think it's that elongated. The tall one with the narrow shoulders. What do they call it? Ectomorph body shape. He's got the narrow shoulders and the super wide hips, and then the elongated head and face. And he was the one that was put in a basket. You know what that means? So some woman probably had intimate relations with some type of hybrid or being, some other type of being that wasn't human, had that baby, saw that it had the elongated head and everything, put it on the river, and then it wound up in the house of Pharaoh. Yeah, Moses. Yeah, so I'm just telling you, be it Christian, Muslim, either way, I don't believe everything that's detailed in the Bible or even all of the Abrahamic scriptures are completely correct, because there are things like this that are just obvious stories that have been just washed over that were something completely different, more on a real, true fallen angel, alien, elongated skull, hybrid, different beings, type of story. And what we go to church and read is all of this softened down and ground up stuff that we can swallow easier. But Ada, it's a pleasure to see you. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. We're just down to one concurrent viewer, and I went ahead and I showed the video with my mom, which is what I wanted to see. So far, I'll let you know all of the experiences that I want to share in this series, and all of it, I believe it all, and none of it conflicts with each other. And all of the experiences that I've had have taught me a lot, especially my heaven experience about religion, the world religion, and needing a savior or a messiah and that kind of thing. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you for coming. Please hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for more notifications, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.